What happens when the promise of a secure retirement starts to slip away? What does it say about our country when someone in their 80s is still scanning groceries or delivering Uber Eats? Not because they want to, but because they have to. What does it mean when we tell people, work hard, pay your taxes, and one day you'll be taken care of, but then turn around and slowly let that promise erode? I'm Ben Chrisley, and on today's episode of Evergreen Perspective, we're taking a hard look at Social Security, one of the most important and most misunderstood programs in American history. We're going to look at where it came from, why it was created, what life looked like before it existed. We're going to break down how it actually works, where the money comes from, how it's managed, and whether Congress really did steal from Social Security, like you've probably heard. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how Social Security is under threat today. From billionaires tweeting about Ponzi schemes to politicians quietly trying to raise the retirement age or gut benefits altogether, there's a real coordinated effort to undo what generations of Americans have counted on. But it doesn't have to be this way because if Social Security represents anything, it's this: it's a promise we made to ourselves that after a lifetime of work, people deserve dignity, not desperation. Let me tell you about Dolores. She's a 74-year-old lady. She worked as a nurse's aide for over 40 years, raised three kids, stayed married to the same guy till he passed away. She never made more than about $38,000 a year. When she retired, like a lot of people her age, she didn't have a big pension or private retirement account. Her savings took a hit, during some financial incidences, and she never fully recovered. But every month she gets a Social Security check. It's not much. It's a little over 1,500, but it's enough to cover her rent and her subsidized senior apartment, her prescriptions, and a few groceries. She counts her pennies. She doesn't eat out. She doesn't take vacations, but she gets by because of Social Security. She told me that if the check had ever stopped coming in, she said, I don't know what I would do. I'd have to move in with my daughter, but she's already working two jobs and raising her own kids. So not imagine Dolores had retired in 1925, 10 years before Social Security existed. There wouldn't be a monthly check. There wouldn't be Medicare to help cover her doctor's visits. There wouldn't be hope that her kids could help. She'd have to hope that she wouldn't get sick, hope that charity would step in. Before Social Security, growing old in America was a risky business. There was no guaranteed income, no safety net, no backup plan. If you couldn't work anymore because of age, injury, or illness, you were on your own. Some folks moved in with their kids if they had family who could help them. Others relied on churches and neighbors and local charities, but a lot of people, they just fell through the cracks. Many ended up in poorhouses. They were government run institutions where people who had no income or family support spent their lives, the rest of their lives, right? These places were overcrowded, underfunded, and deeply stigmatized. Living there was seen as a failure, a source of shame. You weren't retired, you were warehoused. Others lived on the street, survived on soup kitchens or begged. Some people, obviously they just worked and worked till they physically couldn't work anymore, doing whatever job they could find into their 70s and 80s just to eat. The elderly poverty rate back then was staggering. Estimates put it at over 50% of seniors lived below the poverty line in the 20th century. There was no safety net to catch them. No disability checks, no survivors benefits, no Social Security, no Medicare, no guarantee of anything. People died from neglect, malnutrition, and untreated illnesses, not because there wasn't enough food or medicine, but because there wasn't a system to make sure they got it. That's what falling through the cracks looked like. By the time the Great Depression hit in the 1930s, things got even worse. There's no pensions for most workers, no Medicare, no 401ks. And even if you had managed to save a little, well, the stock market crash of 1929 wiped out what little security many families had left. And let's be real, working class people didn't have much to begin with. This was the world that gave birth to Social Security. It wasn't some random government idea, it was a direct response to people suffering. To a country looking around and realizing we can't keep letting people age into poverty and just hope for the best. So the question became, what do we do about it? But before we get into that, I want to bring in Kate for Kate's Civic Corner to tell us about engagement and volunteer opportunities in and around the 3rd Congressional District.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, folks. Kate here with the Civic Corner, taking a minute to highlight some opportunities to get involved here in Southwest Washington. If you're not around here, do a little searching on the web when you have a minute. I'm sure you'll find some great options in your area. We'll put a link for each of these events in the show notes where you can find more information, including what to expect and how to sign up. All right, we have the Longview Spring Dark Market coming up on April 19th and 20th at the Cowlitz County Event Center. Sounds like a pretty awesome opportunity to mingle with the community and check out some local vendors. On April 22nd, the Clark County Republicans will be holding their quarterly meeting at 6:30 p.m. at the Mason Building in Vancouver. And on April 23rd, the 20th Legislative District Democrats will be holding their general meeting at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And the volunteer opportunity that we're highlighting this week is an ongoing one. The South Pacific County Humane Society is looking for help in a variety of areas, including dog walking, cat cuddling, adoption counseling, gardening, grant writing, and more. Some pretty awesome stuff to help with. Check out their site for full details. And if there's an event in Southwest Washington that you'd like us to feature here on Evergreen Perspective, please put it in the comments or send us an email. We'd love to hear about it. This is Kate with Kate Civic Corner, encouraging you to get out there and get involved. Now back to Ben.
Thanks, Kate. So, what did we do about it? That's where Franklin Delano Roosevelt stepped in. In 1935, in the thick of the Great Depression, President Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law. Now, this wasn't just another government program. This was a turning point, a moment when the country said, we're not going to let people who've worked their whole lives be abandoned in their final years. FDR called it a measure of protection to the average citizen and his family. He didn't pitch it as charity because it's not. He framed it as insurance. You pay in while you work, and when the time comes, you get something back. Simple, fair, and earned. It was a radical idea for the time, not because people gave money for nothing, but because it guaranteed that working people would have something to fall back on in old age.